Hi and welcome to What Developers Say About IntelliJ IDEA. I'm your host, Mala Gupta. And today I'm honored to talk with Heinz, the mastermind behind the Java Specialist newsletter, which I believe all Java developers have read or at least know about. And Heinz already published 289 issues of this newsletter. So if you haven't already read it, I strongly recommend that you do. Heinz is a Java champion, a Java developer, a very well-known and respected speaker at Java conferences across the globe. He has authored multiple courses and taught thousands of developers. And he also published a course to help developers work with IntelliJ IDEA, which I absolutely loved. And that's
Thank
not
you.
all. Heinz also organizes JCrete, which is an unconference on the beautiful island of Crete, Greece, where Heinz lives. So welcome, Heinz. It's a pleasure and an honor to talk with you today.
Well, Mala, that's the best biography I've ever heard of myself. I'm going to ask you to send that to me because that's great. Thank you so much. You know, there are about 10 million Java programmers out there. And, you know, my readership is a very small fraction of that. But the way I look at it is I always say that it's the top 1% that read it, you know, not the bottom, the top.
I tried my best to introduce you. I'm sure there's much more than what I said. And would you like to share something that developers don't find on your official introduction page that you have?
I'm going to tell you a secret, which you might surprise you. I actually don't think that Java is a very well thought out language. Oops. I might lose my Java champion title here. And in fact, because it's so broken, it gives you lots of opportunities to write about it. If it was a perfect language, there'd be no funny crooks and nannies that I could discover. But it's a fascinating language. I enjoy studying it, but it's a language which has lots of things that are surprising. And the principle of least astonishment is not exactly what you'll find in Java. In fact, quite often you'll be quite astonished. That said, the Java language does have very good gatekeepers, and they've been careful in how they made changes so that the amazing thing is you can still run code from Java 1.0 and Java 17 in many cases. Obviously, some things change, but they tend not to. They tend to even keep the broken code consistent with what it was in the past.
I would like to draw an analogy there because when you kind of fall in love with a person, you get to know a lot of things about the other person and you know about everything which is kind of broken or which works with the person. But the reason you stay in love with the person is because it is beautiful, it is interesting, and
yes,
it does the work for you. So I would. So you still get to keep your Java title.
Oh, thank you.
When is it when you started working with IntelliJ IDEA, and how and why did you start working with it?
Yeah, there's a bit of a story there. It was quite a while ago. I used to use something called Ball and JBuilder. There was the biggest rage back in the day. And then I did some work in Germany, and we were using Eclipse in Germany. And then I moved to Eclipse because it was way better than JBuilder. It was like, you know, it was no comparison. Eclipse was just completely incredible. You know, you didn't have to do any compiling. You just save it, then it's compiled. It was fantastic. And then that was for about a year that I used Eclipse. And then I was on a project, and I had to work with some code that was very not well factored. Let me put it that way. It wasn't very well factored, and I had to very quickly change the code in such a way that I wouldn't break it, but be able to add the features which were necessary. And I'd heard about IntelliJ. A lot of people talked about it. I had never used it, but I'd heard about it, and I decided to see whether IntelliJ would be able to provide that. Also, IntelliJ at the time had the best GUI builder that I could find anyway. So I moved over to IntelliJ just to try it out, and I was completely blown away by the analysis features. You know, I could change the code so easily. I would simply take the code. I would, I could, you know, make things more private when it was possible. I could find code which wasn't being used. And it was an absolute piece of cake to change that code base and to be able to actually work with it and add the functionality that that was necessary. And then once my 30-day timeout trial expired, I bought IntelliJ. And I always say that I paid twice for IntelliJ. First of all, I had to buy it. That was before you had the community edition. And then secondly, I was charging per hour, so I was actually earning less because I was so fast. And I've just been using it since, because even though I'm getting paid less because I'm too fast, it's so much more pleasant to work with it than anything else I've tried. And I've tried other ones as well. Of course, with an IDE, it's always the one that you know the best. The same with the language. The one that you know the best is the one you should be using. But yeah, so I got stuck on that. It's around about, I think it was around about 2003 that I did that change. And I really enjoy using it. It was really, the analysis was what sold me on it, that I could apply certain rules. And it happened to me again another time with another project about a year later, where I had I delivered some code. I don't know, 10,000 lines. It was a small project, but I delivered the code to the customer, and the customer looked at it and said, "Nope, this won't pass our code guidelines." And I said, "Your code guidelines? What code guidelines would those be?" And he said to me, "No, our code guidelines is that every single local variable and parameter that can be final has to be final." And I was like, "Why?" I mean, that's not even how the JDK is written. So why would you have these weird rules? That was their company policy. And so I was like scratching my head going, okay, well, whatever. So I went, took IntelliJ, and 5 minutes later I was done. And then I showed him 100 places in his code where they also didn't do it. So it's just it takes away the busy work, and I think that's something which I like. It's the you can get on with the interesting work, the fun work, and leave the busy work to the artificial intelligence that's running inside IntelliJ.
I would now like the viewers to see the features that you love the most about IntelliJ. First question is the feature that you use in the first 10 seconds of starting IntelliJ IDEA.
Yeah, that's a tough one because I don't really start it very often. It's just running all the time. It just runs. So let me show you a few things that I use. So as you mentioned, by the way, something else, Marla, I've written a course on IntelliJ. Just a little, tips on how to become better at IntelliJ. It's called IntelliJ Wizardry. And I sold it for $7, just a little fee for various technical reasons. I have to have some price, so that's the price. But until the end of July 2021, you get it for free if you go to that link, tinyurl.com/wizardry21. But I want to show you a few things that I always do, that I do all the time. Like the one thing which is just so helpful is the way that you can select text more and more. So here's some class I wrote. So let's say I want to select this whole function here, so the whole for loop. So I can click anywhere in here and press Command W, and it just expands the selection. So every time I press Command W, it makes it one bigger. And then it goes to the whole thing. So if you want to quickly select something, you just do it like that. And this I use really all the time. The selection, selecting more and more text. And also what's very useful with IntelliJ is if you want to copy a whole line, you Control C and you've done it. The whole line is done. And there's actually a very nice feature. I've got to just find this quickly. Under Help, there's a thing called Productivity Guide. And this shows you what you've been using most. So I'm not actually sure where here to see used. There you go. As I said, syntax-aware selection. That's what I use the most, 164,000 times.
So the next question is, what do you like most about IntelliJ IDEA? Given that you already have a course, I think that would be a tough question for you.
It's really hard to say what I like most. There's so much that I like about it. But what I like about it is that it seems to be a tool written by programmers for programmers. It's something where, eat your own dog food. It seems like the programmers who've been working with IntelliJ, who create IntelliJ, are the ones also using it. And I think that makes a really big difference. So many times I do something and people say, wow, like, what plugin is that? And I go, no, that's not a plugin. That's just IntelliJ. It just works like that out of the box. So that's something which I find quite interesting is how when people use it, it just works out of the box without any additional plugin this, plugin that. I mean, you can get plugins, but I hardly ever install anything. I just use the standard one.
Which IntelliJ IDEA feature you cannot live without?
Not live without. Yeah, that's a tricky one. Let me go back a bit, because what feature I can't do without, let me rather say what feature has annoyed me that you've changed. Because that's a better way of looking at it. So in the past, it was very easy and obvious when you ran a program to also know where the VM parameters were set. So let me show you what I mean by that. So if you say run, by default, well, you can set it up so that it actually always shows you the setting, the setting edit configuration page. And that was actually something which I asked for, and they did it very nicely. But the problem is that it used to be very obvious where your VM parameters are, whereas nowadays, by default, you actually have to go modify options and then say add VM options. So the problem with any change one makes is that people are used to a specific look and feel, and when one changes that, then it becomes difficult to use, more difficult to use. And not just for me, but for students, because I use IntelliJ for teaching Java as well. And if all of a sudden things change, it can be confusing and a bit difficult for people to know where to find these changes. So this is something which I think is, if one changes dialogues and parameters and so on, it might be good to make it optional to keep it the old look and feel and the old dialogues. But even then, it's tricky. The other thing which I think, if you were to change all of your keyboard shortcuts, that would definitely make this very, very difficult to use. So please don't go and wholesale change your keyboard shortcuts. Also, other things like, for example, we've got this really cool feature where you can do a column select, and here's a column select, and just selecting a whole column at a time. And this column select, this is something I use frequently, because quite often you want to select a column rather than just normal text. You can also do this with other IDEs nowadays, but it used to be like a feature which only IntelliJ could do. And the thing with column select, that's also changed a few times. I know how to use it, because it took me some while to figure out sort of how it works. Like, for example, if I want to select the new over here, I wouldn't be able to do, like, I can't do this, I can't jump, because I'm going to be in the wrong position. I'm still trying to get used to the darkulus scheme. I actually don't like it. I prefer the light scheme, but most people actually use this one nowadays, and so it's something which I have to get used to, because if that's what everybody likes, then if I'm doing a demo or a talk somewhere and I put up a white screen, people actually go like, whoa, what's going on? The only thing I changed with this was I made the errors a lot more obvious. So I make it like very, very bright red. So I know anything which is very bright red, that's an error. Otherwise, I just don't see my errors very well.
Which feature you do not use every day, but you think is very important or helpful?
Yeah, there's some interesting features in IntelliJ. I actually just use a tiny fraction of these features. So the thing that, the way that one could look at the IDEA and say, what don't I use very often? So we looked at what I use most of the time, which was the expanding select, I think you called it, or something like that. I've already forgotten what it's called. Let's quickly look at used. The syntax-aware selection is the official name. But if you look at something which I don't use very often, go to class, for example, and I use a different approach than go to class. But there'll be, yeah, for example, these diagrams. The diagrams I don't use very often. I think that doing UML diagrams at that level is tricky because, well, I mean, it's good to have it. I've seen people use it, but I don't use it very often. There's so much in IntelliJ, and as I said, I'm using a tiny portion of it. I can actually, and for most of the stuff that I do, I could actually make do just with the community edition. I think the Ultimate does have some additional features which are very useful, but for almost like all the courses I do, I can do just with the normal community edition. So the Ultimate is just much more, you know. I'm also normally on the early access version of IntelliJ, because that helps me to give feedback on the latest features which are added, and also report bugs. It's very good to report bugs if you can.
Regarding the diagrams that you mentioned, I quite use them often because I was also working with one of the latest language features in Java, which is the sealed classes. So when you are sealing classes, you can actually examine the classes, the hierarchy that you have using those UML diagrams, and that's quite quick and gives you a nice visual clue on what classes are being extended or you can extend before you actually go and seal the classes. And the other thing I use the diagrams is for finding out the dependencies that I have in my code base, because that gives a really quick overview of the dependencies if I have any cyclic dependencies, and you can actually click and zoom in, zoom out. So that's really helpful. I really like to work with them.
Yeah, that's actually something else. You know, your first question about what do you use all the time, I've got to show one more thing I use all the time, and that is the command button. Holding the command down and just navigating, and just the mouse. I love using the mouse. I know some programmers are snobs about the mouse, but I love the mouse. And I use the mouse all the time. That's how I normally work, all one hand on the mouse, one hand on the keyboard. But this to me is absolutely fantastic, because I can always, you know, click on that and it takes me straight to the class, and then Command Alt back goes back to where I was. So the navigation is something I use really an incredible amount of time, and that's something I really couldn't do without. And of course, one can also do it with just Control Command B, also goes there. But to me, just having this hyperlinking is absolutely fantastic, and also the fact that it hovers and shows you a bit of information about the class, but not too much. It just shows it extends abstract set and implements serializable. I was actually looking at these little thing that I discovered last week by accident. You know, if you look at concurrent hash map, it's nothing to do with IntelliJ, but I think it's interesting. So just mention it quickly, is you look at hash map and concurrent hash map, you see that this hash map is, concurrent hash map is inside the public domain. And the same thing with the concurrent map interface. Navigating there now, it's easy to navigate. Also, the folding is also really great. And again, you see this is in the public domain, right? And if you look at the classes in the Java concurrent package, almost all of them are actually in the public domain. And the reason is that they are developed by Doug Lee and members of the JSR 166, and then they are then pushed into the normal JDK. But there's one that isn't, and I noticed that, and I was quite surprised, because the copy on write array list, this one is not part of the public domain, because it's a derivative of the JDK Java util array list. It's actually really different to array list, but because it originated from array list, this is not part of the public domain. So just a little, as you can see, it's navigating around is really convenient, very, very quick to scroll around and to click on things. If you want to see what is get array, jump straight to that. What is array? So often when I'm working with IntelliJ, I'll have one finger on the command button, and the other one's just sort of scurrying around, clicking on things in order to find my way around there. And also the usage is off is very useful there too, because you just say, where is this being used? And it shows you all the places.
And there's something else. You can also kind of click on the usages of methods and the variable names, and you can use, I'm forgetting the name of the inspection, but I think that's quick definition, and you can actually view the code without going to the code definition, so that you can just hover and view the code in a little pop-up, so that when you are, let's say you are debugging code, this is what
right, okay.
So you can use it on methods, variables, classes. Yes, and you can just see the code without the comments, and really helps.
Yeah, who needs the comments? They're out of date anyway, Well, Mala, what's interesting about that is that there's so much to know. When I recorded this course, I think it's like 2 or 3 hours of course, the IntelliJ Wizardry course. When I was finished with it, people said, but you didn't even mention Control-Shift-A. And I said, what is Control-Shift-A? I don't even know about that. And they said, well, that's fine stuff, And you didn't mention Shift-Shift. And I said, what Shift-Shift? I don't know about that. Shift-Shift happened to be by accident when I wanted to hit the Control button and hit the Shift by mistake. So that's when Shift-Shift appeared. It was never on purpose. And then you've got Shift-Shift-Shift-Shift, which is, again, something else. So there's so many little tricks like that that people use. So there's something else which I found very useful, especially when I first started using IntelliJ, and that's that you've got this little printout you can make of the keyboard shortcuts, and then you fold it, and you make a little cardboard thing you put on your desk, and then every day you look, let's see which shortcut I can learn today, and that really helps. The only problem with shortcuts is it becomes so much part of your muscle memory that you don't even know what the shortcut is. It happened to me once, Mala. I was teaching a course, and I needed to do a surround of text. Now, there are different ways of doing it. I think it's called a live template. So, for example, let me just for example put a surround text. So this is a surround template, and it's Command Alt J on my machine, and so I was trying to do this, and I think I was hitting Control Shift J, and it just didn't work. I was like going, what's going on? This keyboard shortcut doesn't work anymore, and it was just for some reason my finger was on the wrong thing, but I didn't actually know what the shortcut was, and it took me a bit of time to figure it out, because I'm so used to hitting Command Alt J that I couldn't find it when I actually needed it. But this is also very nice. You can actually add your own little shortcuts. This is a template I wrote. Measure the time. So if you want to measure how long it takes to print something or to do something, I just do, especially if I'm doing demos, I'll just do Command Alt J, surround with the time, and boom, they've got the timing there. And these shortcuts can actually be quite sophisticated. That's also something I can't do without. I use these surround live templates really all the time as well. Oh, one more thing. Sorry, I've got to just mention this, because this is something which is completely incredible, is the fact that you've got auto completion, which is really smart. You know, I mean, I've used autocompletion for decades. I think Ball in C++ must have had autocompletion. You know, VI doesn't, but most other tools do. But if I say list of string, for example, list equals, and I press Control space, I get everything. I get arithmetic exception. I don't know why you show that, but it's there, right? But if I say new Control space, it shows me verify error. What is verify error doing there, right? It's completely nonsensical. So I never ever use this autocompletion. I use smart autocompletion, which is Control Shift space. It's a slight difference, and then it shows me everything which is a list. So it narrows it down to what could possibly be correct. It's in the latest version, I think it was of the EAP, the early access version, the 2021 version, they actually have the option of showing you the one which you've used the most. And I tried using that, but I don't like that very much. I prefer seeing them alphabetically, so I've turned it off again. But that's, if you like that, that's also quite nice. If you want to say map integer, integer, map equals new, and again, Control Shift space will give you all the actual maps you've got there. And then, of course, instead of typing linked hash map, you just say LHM, and you've got the right one there. So it's very quick to use. That's why I said when I started, I said that this is, it cost me twice. First I had to buy the license, and then I'm not working, it takes me less hours to do the work I need to do, and if I'm being paid per hour, then I'm actually losing twice.
All the features that you just demonstrated, we use all of them all the time. And I also had a video on the live templates because I was absolutely blown by that feature.
Well, the way that I do it is I normally copy and paste what's there and change it. That's the easiest way to do it. But even that was quite tricky. I did one which was quite sophisticated, especially if you're trying to find, I think, the parameters. There are some which are tricky to do if you don't know Groovy that well, which I don't. But yeah, they're a really fantastic feature, which I use all the time. What I actually did was a little tip for those who use multiple computers. I've got, because of the way I work, I sometimes have to swap laptops. And so what I do is I've actually put all the IntelliJ settings into Dropbox, and I do a symbolic link to that setting, so that if I go to another laptop, I've got the same live templates and the same shortcuts. Everything's the same, because as I said, muscle memory is really difficult to get around.
If there's anything that you would like to add to any of the features.
Well, I've got loads of features additional in my course, which you should get as well. As I said, it's a free coupon until the end of July. Just go to tinyurl.com/capitals. What was it again? It was it Wizardry 21? As an IntelliJ wizardry. But there's something else I want to mention. That is, I've always found JetBrains to be very, very nice company to associate with. And the reason is that, as I said, it's a company which seems to be passionate about software, and it flows through. It's like developers are important there. You know, it's a great tools company. The tools are fun to use. The whole concept of IntelliJ was make it so that developers don't have to do busy work. Make it so they can just get on with the job, don't have busy work, that they can actually enjoy themselves, to enjoy it, to enjoy the coding, and not to do busy work. They also tried in the beginning to make it so you don't need to ever take your hands off the keyboard. So everything could be done with shortcuts, everything. You'd never actually need to use a mouse with IntelliJ. Although, as I said, I love the mouse and I use a mouse all the time. But you actually can get away without using the mouse, which makes some people happy. I like the mouse, so I don't care, but some people really like it.
Has IntelliJ IDEA helped you to be a happier and productive developer? And if
Look
so,
at
how?
me. I'm really happy.
That is one of the best answers that I've heard. I would like to end this interview by asking if you have any puzzle for us to kind of work on.
I do. It's actually something which confused me. And let's see if it confuses you too. So let's say you wanted to work out this really massive factorial. Now I've got an 8-core laptop, and I'm going to have the answer, big integer. Answer is going to be, let's import that, alt enter imports it, is going to be int stream.range. Let's make it really big, so make it 200,000. It's going to be a massive number. Dot app to object. Object over here, it needs to import the int stream as well. And it's going to be big integer colon value off. And then we're going to say dot reduce, and we're just going to use integer of 1 as a big integer 1 as a identity. And then we're going to have the multiply. Control Shift Space, of course, gives you all the nice options that would make sense here. So we're going to multiply. So we're going to generate this massive number over here. And I mentioned that I've got this nice live template. It does this, just to print the time. And we're also going to print out the number of bits over here. So bit count. So let's run that code and see how long that takes for 200,000. Now, it's a massive number, so it might take a couple of minutes. Oh, that was very fast. Because I've made a mistake. I must start from 1, not from 200,000. Otherwise, the answer is 0, and it's no bits at all. Let's try it again. And now we can see that it takes a while. This is Java 17, early access. I think it's also the IntelliJ early access version. So lots of early access going on. And after running it for a while, let's see how long it takes to run. There we go, 16 seconds. All right. And now I'm going to do this in parallel. So I've got four cores, no? 8 cores in this machine. 8 cores, hyper-threading, so it's 16 hyper-threads. So if it's 8 cores, how fast should this be if I run it in parallel? That's the question. Do you want to have a guess, Marla?
I don't know if it's a wild guess. Let's say 1 second.
1 second? Well,
Yes.
it's 16 seconds, and you got 8 cores running at the same time. So 16 seconds, and you've got 8 cores running it in parallel. You would say 1 second?
Yes.
Okay. I think you looked at my answer because you're pretty close.
No, I did
You're
not
very
cheat.
good. Very good. You cheated. You tried it out while you're coding whilst I'm coding. And you obviously know.
No.
That's really good, Marla. Well done. Well done. You got it right.
Thank
Which
you.
is actually not possible because I've only got 8 cores. The best case scenario should be 2 seconds, but it isn't. It's less than a second. And that's the puzzle. Here we go.
So what is the answer to the puzzle? Or the viewers have to
Yeah, you
find
got to
it
figure that out.
and-
You got to figure out why it's doing this.
Sorry.
Because your guess of 1 second isn't technically possible, right? Through parallelism. Because first of all, we only have 8. We only have 8 cores, 16 hyperthreads, which doesn't really give you full parallelism. And so, but there's also, Amdahl's law, which means you probably should expect it for to be doing it in about, I'd say, 8 seconds, 7 seconds, 8 seconds. But we did it in under 1 second. So you get 100% for getting the correct answer. But the question is why? And that's how we end the interview.
So that was, I would say, a brilliant way to end this interview. And everyone who's watching, go and find out the answers, and you can have your answers as comments to this video, or you can ping Heinz on his Twitter handle. So is that right, Heinz?
Yeah, they can, or if they subscribe to our newsletter, So javaspecialists.eu up there. And then you'll get my email and we can just communicate that way.
And absolutely. And when you hear from Heinz on after you subscribe to the newsletter, make sure you reply to the newsletter, because I did when I got my first welcome newsletter, and Heinz was so kind to reply to my emails. So if you want to hear from Heinz, subscribe to the newsletter and reply to his welcome email. And of course, keep using IntelliJ IDEA. Thank you so much, Heinz. It was an absolute pleasure to talk with you today.
Thank you. It's been really fun with you as well.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye and take care.
Bye, Mala.